All right, hello everyone, and welcome to an episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. For my very special guest today, I have none other than Adrian M. Gibson. Hello, Adrian. It is so great
Hello.
to see you.
It's very good to see you too. It's been a
Yeah,
long time coming, but I'm glad we finally get the chance to
me
chat.
too. Me too. There are so many just wonderful, lovely people that I want to talk to in our community, and you've been one of them for a long time. I had the immense pleasure of reading and reviewing. I have a dedicated review on the channel of Mushroom Blues, and that was partly, but I had wanted to read it anyway. But it was for the occasion
You
of
were obligated for
I was actually
SPFBO.
obligated, which was a win-win because I was a judge for SPFBO, and your book went all the way to the end. It tied for first place,
Mhm.
and I have a very positive review of it, a very
Thank you again.
enthusiastic review, in fact, on the channel. Just the incredible world building, so different from anything you've ever read. This is a really great read, guys. If you haven't picked this up yet, I enjoyed it thoroughly. Very noir, as you can tell from the cover. And yes, there are mushroom people. That's right there on the cover. So not a spoiler, but that's
No, no, very much not a spoiler. I would say
yeah.
more of like a selling point
I think
than
so.
anything.
I
Yeah.
I think so. A great selling point. But you're more than just an author. I mean, being an author is wonderful. But
Mhm.
you also are part of the trio that is the SFF Addicts, along with
Mhm.
MJ Kuhn and Greta Kelly, which is part of the bigger. You're gonna have to explain all this to me. But this trio is part of the larger grouping of the FanFi Addicts, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like FanFi Addict is basically what started as a book blog,
Yeah.
but has expanded to incorporate SFF Addicts as the podcast, sort of like the lead podcast. There's also the Fanfighting Book Club, which MJ Kuhn and Fraser Armitage run. There's TBRCon, which is our virtual convention,
Yep.
and then there's the YouTube channel, which hosts a lot of that stuff. And with the Book of Spores, fungal SFF anthology, which we launched on Kickstarter in November, and are basically I'm in the process of like production and fulfillment and stuff like that right now.
Book of
That
Spores
that
is a lot of
anthology,
a lot of great writers contributing.
yeah, I mean like Crystal Matar, Greta Kelly, MJ Kuhn, myself, Connor Kaplan, um, Adam Bassett, AJ Calvin, ML Adams, Ryan Kirk, like a bunch of really cool authors who are
Yeah.
all involved in Fanfi Addict in some way or another. So
Yep.
this is kind of a family project. That's our first foray into crowdfunding and Kickstarters, and at this point we're kind of like in the process of becoming, an LLC and a publisher in our own right.
That's fantastic. And what a wonderful group of people. I've had the
Yeah,
pleasure of interacting in some way, shape, or form with most of those people. And you guys are doing great things over there.
thanks,
Really.
man.
That is so cool. And that's not all, everybody. Also, you have assumed a new role with Grimdark Magazine, correct?
Yeah, so as of when we're recording, as of like about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I started a new position at Grimdark Magazine, basically as like the publishing manager, publishing director of their line of novellas. So Grimdark
Wow.
Magazine, even though they're a magazine, they've published three novellas. One of them by Richard Swan, The Scour, Cast and Gain by Essa Hansen, and then In the Shadow of Their Dying by Michael R. Fletcher and Anna Smith Sparks. So those
Wow.
three
Some great
novellas
names. Yeah.
are, yeah, and they're fantastic books, and those are the three that they've published so far. But I will essentially be leading the entire process of all the future novellas, and we've
Wow.
got some really really cool ones in the works. And I'm actually
Okay.
working on the cover art for one right now, which
Ooh.
is really fun. So yeah, it's kind of like an all encapsulating job where Adrian Collins, who's the head of Grimdark Magazine, he and I will be kind of going through like planning out acquisitions and reaching out to authors and doing all the contractual stuff to receiving the manuscripts and working with the authors, working with the editors, and then going through the stage of art direction and working with the artists to get the cover art and all that kind of stuff. I myself am a designer, so I
Wow.
am going to sometimes handle the design side of things, but then we also have like some in-house freelance designers like Sean T. King to do like typography and design and interiors and stuff like that, all the way through to publication, arcs, reviews, marketing, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like a
Wow.
start to finish type of job. Yeah.
Wow, you have a lot of pots on the stovetop right now. They all smell really good. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that is so
I like
cool.
I like how we're already getting into the cooking metaphors. That makes me
I
so
had to
happy.
go that way because next I wanted to mention A Murder Most Fungal is the next installment. By the way, the series that Mushroom Blues begins is called The Hoffman Report.
Hmm.
And so you have
Hmm.
our next installment pretty much ready to go, right? For
Yeah,
The Hoffman Report. It is called A Murder Most Fungal.
yeah.
What can you tell us about that, Adrian?
So this is a standalone sort of set between Mushroom Blues and its sequel.
Okay.
So it's essentially like the Hoffman Report 1.5
Nice.
is
Nice.
kind of the approach for it. But it's a standalone. So if you've never read Mushroom Blues, this can actually be your first introduction. I allude to events in Mushroom Blues, but I don't outright spoil anything. You can kind of see the repercussions, and if you've read Mushroom Blues, then you get a lot more kind of context in A Murder Most Fungal. But you can go into it cold, and that's totally fine.
Okay.
But this is essentially a very well renowned chef in the world in the nation of Hapon, which is where these
All right.
books take place.
Yeah.
He's one of their most famous chefs. You know, you can kind of think of him as like the Gordon Ramsay or the Jamie Oliver of his his world. You know what I mean?
I mean, is he
And
like Gordon Ramsay though? Because I could
no, no,
see.
no. He's very much like an amalgamation of different chefs and like parts
Okay.
of myself and stuff like that. I
Okay.
didn't want to frame him as like an exact analog for any real
He's not a
world chef.
caricature of anyone,
No,
or no.
no, definitely
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
His name is Pocho Giro, and he's a well-renowned chef. But of course, in the lead up to Mushroom Blues, there's a war that completely destroys this country.
Yeah.
There's a subsequent occupation by the humans who invaded these fungal people, and that's where Mushroom Blues takes place.
Yeah.
And then A Murder Most Fungal is kind of building on that. And Pocho Giro, restaurants aren't exactly essential during wartime, so he kind of his life falls apart and he becomes very destitute. And after the war, stories about him are still circulating. And the leader of the human occupation, a man named Duncan MacArthur,
Yeah.
seeks out Pocho and basically brings him on to lead his own private kitchen. Because for Duncan MacArthur, his mentality is to understand his enemy
Yeah.
by eating like his enemy and experiencing what it's like for them to live and be. And so he
Oh.
brings Pocho on to run this kitchen for him in his headquarters,
Mm-hmm.
and essentially like cook Japanese food for him,
Yeah.
and his military top brass.
Interesting.
To the dismay of his top brass much of the time as well,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like his sort of study of like I want to understand the people who I'm controlling and essentially.
Yeah.
And as a result, it's Pocho and his old chefs kind of getting the crew back together again, and they're cooking for MacArthur. And much like dramas like The Bear, if anyone has ever seen that show, which is not so much a comedy, it has comedic elements, but for me it's a drama.
Uh-huh.
The kitchen is a situation that is rife with tension. And so there is the first chapter kind of giving you feels of the food and kind of this the magic of the cooking process and everything like that. But then
Yeah.
a wrench gets thrown in there, or just problems arise and set off a chain of events that essentially lead Pocho to having to make a decision.
Hmm.
Um, he's blackmailed by gangsters, by fungal gangsters,
Okay.
into killing Duncan MacArthur, assassinating
Ooh.
him through food.
Whoa. Okay. All right. So there we get the it is a murder mystery type thing.
Very much like a crime thriller is kind of
Crime
like the
thriller.
angle that
Okay.
I'm approaching it at. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So whereas Mushroom Blues is very much a police procedural, a murder mystery, A Murder Most Fungal is a kitchen drama and like a crime thriller, kind of taking cues from Hong Kong action movies and crime thrillers and that kind of thing.
Right.
A
Right.
lot of influence from Martin Scorsese movies and things along that line, but all
Okay.
of it wrapped around this kitchen environment, this cooking aesthetic,
And this mushroom culture
and
too.
this mushroom culture. Exactly.
Yeah. Which is one of the things I admired the most when I read Mushroom Blues is just how thoroughly you built this world. How you imagined this world, and down to very little repercussions and differences in culture. But you mentioned that attempt to understand the people that you've conquered. And I imagine that that attempt to understand them could lead to making it a little more complicated for you to rule over these people. So,
Mhm.
there is a tension between understanding, and then once you understand people, you may actually have more empathy for them, which may
Yeah.
make it more difficult for you to be an enforcer, to
Mhm.
be a conqueror, to be a colonialist.
Yeah, and this is something that I drew a lot from history. The British colonization of India was a huge, huge example for me in terms of like,
Yeah,
here are a bunch of different British, military leaders who are essentially like sent over to rule over sections of this massive, massive geographical space.
much bigger than their
It's
own country. Yeah,
hundreds of times bigger, I think.
yeah,
It's just, not only in terms of geography, but in terms of population
yeah.
and just the complexities of India, especially at that time when it was pre-division, when India and Pakistan were split in two.
Yep,
There's just such a cultural um, cultural and religious social melange going on there. It's really
absolutely.
complicated. And what a lot of British leaders did was they kind of immersed themselves in the local culture. They were
Yep.
adopting garb, they were eating the food, they were,
Going native.
going native. Exactly. They
Yeah,
were even becoming like sexually involved with local women and whatnot.
yeah,
It's a really complicated situation, but I think it provides a lot more nuance for someone who's like in this position of, I am now ruling over this population of people, and for me to effectively do that, I need to better understand the nuances of their culture and their society, their
yeah,
social circumstances, their in this case like a lot of biology as well. And so it does create a little bit of this like, okay, here's my obligation, and here is this opportunity that I have chosen, and like you said, might create a window for empathy for these people. And
yep.
at the same time, it's like Pocho's been tasked with, or not tasked, blackmailed into assassinating this man.
Right,
What would
right.
that event do, and what are the repercussions of that in terms of what his goal is and what MacArthur's goal is in terms of
Yeah,
understanding these people
yeah.
and how he feels about things going forward. So it's kind of like it will have repercussions into the Hoffman Report series,
Sure. Yeah, there's so
but
much tension in this because you have the
yeah,
tension within the colonizer who's developing empathy, one would assume, for the
hmm,
people that he's supposed to be ruling over. But then there's the tension for your main character who, okay, well, he's being forced into this, but he probably is smart enough to realize there are going to be repercussions. Okay, if
yep,
we get rid of this guy, who are they going to replace him with? It could be
exactly,
somebody worse, somebody
yep.
much worse, probably because there's going to be a reaction to this assassination, right?
Hmm.
So,
Again, like if history has taught us anything, it's like you cut the head off the snake and it ends up becoming a hydra,
yep,
right? And it's a really difficult situation, especially in this kind of post-war environment where it's like there are a lot of people who are vying for power, not
yep,
just humans, but also fungals. And Pocho's in this really difficult position where, he's after so many years of hardship, he's finally found like a level of comfort again, a level of stability, but
yeah,
also it's like part of him is trying to reclaim the success and the pride that he once felt before the war kind of destroyed everything that he had. And so
yeah,
it's like he's trying to reassume this mantle that he'd spent his entire adult life climbing up to the top of.
yeah.
And here come these gangsters to just completely mess up everything he's worked so hard for.
Wow. Wow, what a
Yeah.
great premise. Wow. And I'm imagining because of the various culinary elements that we are
Hmm.
encountering in this, that you're a fan of cooking. This is something I'm just imagining. I haven't actually asked you about this, but and there aren't too many fantasy or speculative fiction books
Hmm.
with a a chef or a protagonist
Yeah.
either. So that's that.
There's a really good one that came out recently. Seven Recipes for Revolution by Ryan Rose
Okay.
was a fantastic one. And that was a really cool one to read because I was just like in the process of writing A Murder Most Fungal
Uh-huh.
when I started reading that one. I was like, oh my God, this is like so so cool because like you said, yes, there's food in speculative fiction all the time, and
Yeah.
there's food in Mushroom Blues too. There's like a scene with Henrietta and her partner Koji at a diner, and it's
Yeah.
basically like her just like deep aversion to mushrooms
Or
coming out in
Henrietta.
coming out
Yeah.
in the form of a meal, right?
Yeah.
But this one, it's like I went so much deeper into it, and you know, I myself have worked in restaurants and worked in kitchens, and
Ah.
that was how I spent my university years. Was like I had my university social life in Vancouver, and then I had my extended social life working a part-time job at a restaurant, and
Okay.
that just really opened my eyes to the nuances of the restaurant industry. I even met my friend Nicholas Eames while I was working at that
Oh,
restaurant. The
how
two of us,
cool.
yeah, the
Yeah.
two of us just happened to be working there. And then all these years later, Nick finally got published. I started self-publishing and all this, and so it was really cool for us to like have that origin and then watch each other progress over time in our respective publishing careers. And so it's kind
Yeah.
of like um, the restaurant industry, like a restaurant for me is like the modern equivalent of a pirate ship, and so there's just a wide variety of people from you know an even wider variety of backgrounds, all kind of like smashed together in this really high stress high, you
Yes.
know, very very demanding job, long hours, weird hours, you know,
Yeah.
and the pay is fluctuating. You know, if you're in North America, it's like you're getting your hourly pay, but then you're also getting tips, and so all this kind of stuff kind of plays into it. And then you get into a kitchen, and the kitchen itself is just this, you know, almost militaristically framed environment where it's like there's this hierarchy, there's you know the sort of social cues and codes, yes chef, and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of structure in that environment, but it's still extremely chaotic
Yeah.
once the pressure of service comes into play, and you know external factors like customers demanding a certain thing, or like this isn't up to my satisfaction and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
so it's just really perfect storytelling fuel, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. There's
Like
drama there. There's drama,
there's so
tension.
much baked in drama, and it's absolutely perfect. And so for me it was like all my experience working in restaurants, and you know I'll never go back to work at a restaurant. Like it's insane. And now that I have kids, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to just like daddy disappears from like 6 p.m. to like whatever hour of the night kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it helped me develop this deep respect for the culinary industry, the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
It also gave me a deeper appreciation for food and the breadth of cultures and cuisines that come from those cultures. So when I
Yeah.
was living in Vancouver, I just got a ton of exposure to different cuisines that me coming from like rural British Columbia did not experience growing up. You know, like
Yeah.
Vietnamese food and Filipino food and variations of Chinese food and Indian food and Pakistani and Japanese and all these different kinds of things,
Yeah.
different kinds of European food, African food, South American food, you know, Mexican food beyond like what my preconceived notion of like tacos and whatever else was before I
Yeah.
moved somewhere that had that nuance and diversity of a larger city. And going forward from there, it's like living in Berlin and exploring different parts of Europe,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
now living in South America and experiencing not only Ecuadorian cuisine and culture, but also the variations of cuisine in places like Colombia and Peru and Bolivia and Argentina and Chile and Brazil, and
Wow.
just
Wow.
kind of, you know, really cementing the role of food in my life as one of these kind of like vital pillars of my being,
Yeah.
not only from the perspective of food as sustenance and food as this thing that keeps us alive because we do need it.
Mm.
We can go a couple weeks without it, but you know,
Yeah.
on next to water, it's the most important thing that we humans need.
Yep.
feeding my sons and um, cooking with my wife and her family and the communal aspects of food, all of that just kind of informing how I approach food through the lens of this fictional culture of the Japanese people, and understanding how food has you know its little fungal filaments in every aspect of culture. For me,
Yeah.
it's one of the most foundational parts of a culture.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that informs so much else.
Oh, it reaches deep and it
Yeah.
explains so much of who we are. If you want to understand a culture, one way in is to
Hmm.
try to get your mind wrapped around their cuisine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
absolutely.
mean that's like I dedicate this book in part to Anthony Bourdain because he
Ah,
he really taught me, especially through his books. He's got a really good one called World Travels. He's his show Parts Unknown or Nova Reservations, where he's going to different parts of the world, and it's like a combination travel documentary, but through the lens of food. And it was really amazing to me how he framed the exploration of the unknown,
yeah.
jumping into a culture that's unfamiliar and foreign to you, and food being your gateway into understanding that culture, at least on like a basic level, right? I
Yeah.
go to a new place, the first thing I do is I eat there. And that food, the ingredients involved in the dish, the people who cooked it, the story behind the recipe, the history behind the recipe, what that means to to a culture, like on a social level, on a geographical level, what do they have access to, on a cultural level, what's the significance of these ingredients and how these people farmed them and harvested them and learned how to prepare those specific ingredients is just
Yeah.
unbelievable. The the backwards trajectory that a dish can reveal to you about a history and a people and a culture.
Yeah. See, this is one of the things I admire about your writing. The thoughtfulness of your world building is just wonderful. And
Thank
this
you.
is a great example. You don't see too many people thinking about the culinary side of a culture while they're world building. And
Yeah. No,
yeah.
but it's kind of crazy though, because it's like I look at epic fantasy as a genre, and I'm going to use like Kim Stanley Robinson's The Years of Rice and Salt as an example.
Okay.
That is that is like historical fantasy,
Hmm.
more on the historical side of things, but because it's an alternate history, if the Mongol horde continued to essentially occupy and
Hold
colonize the
their
world.
empire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the very name of that book, The Years of Rice and Salt,
Hmm.
that empire is built on rice and salt. Those
Yeah.
two ingredients, one of them being a mineral, one of them being a grain,
Yep.
are even like in our own world, the foundations of countless empires across history.
Hmm.
The world that we know it today would not exist were it not for salt or rice. Those
True.
two things, you can add wheat to that as well. You can include access to water. There are certain staples in the human experience
Yeah.
that have dictated the founding and growth and expansion of numerous empires across history.
The Spice
You know,
Road, the Age of
Spice Road, yep,
Exploration, it's on and on it goes.
all of it, all of it. But the thing is like epic fantasy will take inspirations from that,
Yeah.
but they won't necessarily, these books won't necessarily cue into, okay, you're talking about the empire, you're talking about the expansion, you're talking about the battles, you're talking about the politics, but you're not talking about the food.
Yeah.
The food is just kind of like a surface level reference point that
Yeah.
you've built everything else on top of, but you're not actually exploring the nuances and the conditions that make that particular food or mineral or what have you so important and so
Yeah.
integral to why this empire exists in the first place.
And central to all the drama, the
Hmm.
exploitation, the
Yep.
oppression, the
Yep.
colonization. it's all about resources like
Hmm.
salt or spices or what have you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we talk like we were talking about British India
Yeah.
and tea,
Yep.
spices. Like
Yep.
the British, occupation of parts of China and
Yep.
British incursions into China, Portuguese and Spanish and Southeast Asia, all these things
Yep.
come down to access to spices, access to very specific resources, and a huge portion of the time those resources are food. And it absolutely fascinates me how powerful food can be, not just for a human on an individual level in order to survive, but on a societal level, on an institutional level, on a government level. Now we have the analogy of like oil and energy resources as our sort of new age resource that is dictating governmental foreign policy and things along those lines. But food is still a huge part of it. Access to water, the role of agriculture and global markets in our current society. And the
Huge.
COVID pandemic was a clear example of like
Yeah.
when that framework starts to fall apart, suddenly these things aren't on your grocery shelf anymore.
Yep.
Suddenly your energy bill is going up and the cost of filling up your gas tank is going up and all these things. So these are like rippling repercussions, and
Yeah.
food is such a vital part of the very fabric of our societies and our
Yeah.
being.
It's just begging to be written about. And
Yeah, yeah, man.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but through the lens of like, you know, here's it's not necessarily like I mean, you've read Mushroom Blue, so you understand like how I approach world building where I'm like, I'm not just gonna dump exposition on you.
Right.
I'm not gonna bog you down in these little details.
Right.
These are things that I've thought of, but
Yeah.
I'm just giving you like an entertaining window into
Exactly.
this society through the lens of a murder mystery or a crime thriller.
Yeah.
But that nuance is there if you are looking for it or if you catch it. And it can just kind of like add to the richness and believability of that particular world and experience.
Ah, wonderful. Yeah. Well, my personal experience is much less than yours in the world of restaurants and whatnot. I basically consists of when I was 17, the summer I graduated from high school and went out to Washington State,
Mm.
so near where you're from, but south of the border for you.
Yep.
But there were all the good jobs were taken up because where I'm from, Vermont, the high school finishes later than in
Mm-hmm.
Washington. So all the good jobs were taken up. I had the dregs. I needed a summer job. I had to make money. So I ended up getting the graveyard shift at a Denny's restaurant,
Oh no.
washing dishes and being a
Oh
busboy.
man.
It was the worst
That is
job.
that is like the dregs of the dregs right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Wow.
Pretty much.
Oh my
Yeah. And I don't know if
god.
do you have Denny's in Canada or
We do have Denny's, yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. But it's like that place. It's like it's open at 3 a.m. when you're
Yeah.
drunk and you're leaving the bar or the club or something like that.
There is no place busier at 10 a.m. on a Saturday than a
Yep.
Denny's, I promise you. And the
Hmm.
stuff I saw go down there, let me tell you.
It's just like it's kind of funny. It's just as hopping as like the bars and clubs that people come from
Yeah.
because it's
That
just
they're
like this
already drunk or
they're
high
already
or
drunk.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's just this
Yeah.
wave. It's like a migratory pattern of drunkenness. It's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're these people from the club, and then it's like, oh, poor Philip, like 17 years old, having to clean up after these people, probably
Yeah.
having to like mop up some vomit or
Oh, the
something like that.
bathroom? Don't even get
Yeah,
started.
yeah.
I had to clean the bathrooms too. That was part of the job.
Oh
So
no, man.
yeah, it was the worst job I've ever had by far, like not
Yeah.
even close. So less positive.
No, but at the same
Uh,
thing, at the same time, um it was a character building
yes,
experience for you, yeah.
yes. I consider myself a good tipper to this day
Hmm.
because of that experience. Like I
Yeah.
appreciate people who work in restaurants very much. So yeah, but yeah,
Well, thankfully in Pocho's kitchen, the whole building is made of fungi and mycelium, and so the
yeah.
floors are self-cleaning,
Oh, that's
They'll just
awesome.
yeah,
Yeah,
the floors will just consume whatever falls onto it. So,
that's great.
young Philip would have been happy to work in Pocho's kitchen.
Oh, would have been much happier, I'm sure. except for the whole gangster part. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Gangsters aside, like,
Yeah.
and colonizers aside, but
There were some of those at the Denny's too, by the way.
I can imagine
But
some
anyway,
Hell's Angels or whatever. But
yeah. You mentioned Nicholas Eames, and I
yeah.
wanted to mention too because I had such a great time listening to I think it's called the book track version of the audiobook. I may have be getting that phrase wrong, but essentially it's not just an audiobook, it's an audiobook with lots of sound effects and music going on and all kinds of stuff. And it was just so much fun. It was a few months ago when I listened to it, but that was a blast. And of course, how appropriate for that book in particular to have
Hmm.
music going on all the time because there
Yeah.
are all these allusions to, you know, old school rock and all that in there. So,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
like in Kings of the Wild, it's very much like kind of clued into the 70s rock scene,
Yep.
Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd,
Yep.
type of
Yep.
thing. And yeah, I mean, just like seeing what Nick did with that book really made me think about how to incorporate sort of like real world references and sort of real world inspirations and kind
Uh-huh.
of mold it into a secondary world.
Yeah.
So the way that he made 70s rock such a huge, you know, fundamental part of Kings of the Wild, and then for book two for Bloody Rose, how he did that with 80s music on like hair, like hair metal and getting into like the more like synth heavy 80s stuff,
Yeah.
and then book three, which he's working on right now, kind of more into like 90s hip hop and grunge and stuff along those
Oh, how
lines, right?
cool. Okay.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a decade by decade type thing, which is really awesome. That gave me a lot of inspiration when approaching Mushroom Blues. Like music is a part of Mushroom Blues. Henrietta has these cassettes that she inherited from her father,
Yes. Yes.
and
From her
all of the
father.
all of the all of the songs that she references are like kind of kind of nods to friends of mine and musicians and bands that I really
Uh,
love.
yeah.
And then building out like a Spotify playlist for the
You
book
have
as
yeah,
well,
I was gonna say
and
you
like an
have
original soundtrack that two of my friends in Sweden produced for the book. So
that is so cool.
yeah, so that just like Nick has been such a huge inspiration in so many ways, but he kind of made me feel less trepidation when it came to having those real world allegories and references
Yeah.
infused into the book, and being a lot more fearless about like, yeah, that's actually just for me, and hopefully readers will clue into it and enjoy it just as much as me, right? Just
Yeah.
in the same way that you read Kings of the Wild and you're like, oh, you start cluing into all the musical references and the the names and stuff like that. The fact that like this character Moog is named after a keyboard and
Yeah.
like a synthesizer and all these kinds of things. And it's
Oh,
just
I
like
love Moog.
you
Yeah.
don't have to, you know, you don't have to make your secondary world so separate
Mm,
from our lived experience. And I think readers can really get a lot out of having that connective tissue between this fantasy book or this sci-fi book that they're reading and seeing the points of connection to things that they are familiar with and things that they love, right?
yeah.
So I thank Nick for that among like so many other
Oh,
things,
I'm a
right?
believer. I really love that you have this soundtrack. And by the way, how can folks get a hold of that if they want to listen to the music?
So if they want to listen to the music, like there's a Spotify playlist, so you can just listen to the whole thing there.
Okay.
And then Sporer, that's the name of my friends in Sweden. They have a Bandcamp. So if you just search Mushroom Blues Bandcamp, you can just buy the digital album there.
Okay, cool.
And then you can also listen to it on Spotify. And
I'll,
then
I'll put a
I've
link.
made
I'll put a
thank
link
you.
in the description too for
Cool.
everybody. So,
Yeah, and then I've also made a playlist for a Murder Most Fungal. So
oh, sweet.
playlists are kind of like something that I'm going to do for every book that I do. And
Yeah.
then in Mushroom Blues, I've got a page at the back. Um, you know, if you have a physical copy or an ebook, there's like QR codes and stuff like that to
I
listen
have
to
this.
all the
Okay,
stuff.
yeah.
So
Sweet. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Oh, that's awesome. And I'm a believer really because I love the the link between music and inspiration and my own writing and to the extent that I don't have a full playlist like you, but I did commission my friend Nikhil Koparkar, who is a professional composer.
Hmm.
He wrote music for The Wheel of Time and other, pretty big shows, and he's basically a Hollywood composer.
Hmm.
Wonderful person too. But I commissioned him to write a theme song for the Adan trilogy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that I'm very happy about, and I worked with him a lot to. I wanted to convey that world through
Hmm.
music.
Yeah.
I wanted people to experience the feel of that world through this piece. And even better, I actually had my older daughter play the cello for it as well. She plays the
Amazing.
cello on that. So, because she's a very accomplished cellist,
Hmm.
I'm a proud dad. So, I had her record at my college where they have a nice recording studio,
Yeah.
and Nikhil was able to put that into the piece. And yeah, I was very
No,
happy
but that's
about
so
that.
cool. But then it just becomes extremely personal, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and like even doing the audiobook for Mushroom Blues, there's a scene that takes place in like an underground jazz club,
Uh-huh.
and there's a singer who's Faye and the Valentines
Yes, I
is her
remember the
band,
scene very
as
well.
as a as a as a reference to Cowboy Bebop, if anyone's ever seen that show.
Uh-huh.
Um, so my sister-in-law is a singer, and she actually recorded the vocals for that song,
Oh, that's so
and then
lovely.
and then
Yeah.
my producer basically just like infused that into um the audiobook narration by Imogen Church. So it's like
Oh,
it's so
wow.
cool the ways that you, and I was talking to Peter Arulian about this on an upcoming interview that we've got on SFF Addicts,
Oh,
and because
cool.
he's a musician, like he makes rock and metal music,
Yeah.
but we were talking about um the audiobook that Saga is doing for Songs of the Dead, which is the book that he co-wrote with Brandon Sanderson. So
Yes.
the
Yes.
audiobook for that, there are parts in the story where they were just like, the Saga came to Peter and were like, "Hey, do you want to sing this part?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course I do."
Oh,
And
cool.
it's like how strange it is to me that I wasn't even a question that was brought up at the very beginning. You know what I mean? It's like, here's this book that is like a fantasy centered entirely around music, a music magic system, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Peter himself is a musician with like an incredible voice and incredible talent and range. And Saga wasn't just like from the get go, like, hey, we got to get you singing on this at some point. It's like these are audiobooks, and music is a huge part of the audio experience. So
Yeah.
like hopefully more audiobooks will start incorporating that in the future. I think it would be really, really cool.
Oh, yeah. This book track thing, if I got the terminology right,
I don't know. I don't know what it is, because it's not like a full audio drama, but it's like
no, no.
partway there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But music, in the case of Kings of the Wild, was a big part of it,
Yeah.
and there were sound effects and such. It was
Hmm.
fun. It was a lot of fun. Peter Aurelian also is the force behind the anthology that's on Kickstarter right now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Unbroken, which he and
Unbroken,
Sean
right?
Speakman
Okay.
are running together. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got in on that myself. I'm excited
One
for
of one
it.
of like one of like thousands and thousands
Yeah,
of
I mean
people.
it's raised a lot of money for a good
Yeah.
cause too. I
Hmm.
understand it's for health related expenses and such.
Hmm.
Because when you're a musician and a writer, um, especially in the United States, it's
Yeah.
very difficult if you don't have health insurance.
Exactly. Yeah. And I
Yeah,
mean, I mean, it's really cool to see what crowdfunding and Kickstarter are able to do for, not just on like on one end of the spectrum. I see like Wraithmarked and other kind of, I would call them like boutique publishers, where they're
yeah,
like
pretty
very
high
much
end
they're
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
but they're
yeah,
but they're very much catering to like a specific audience
yeah,
and aesthetic, and they're going in on anthologies and special editions and with all the
yeah,
all the accoutrements. But it's so cool to see that side of things. And then on the other side, it's like, you know a lot of indie authors are releasing special editions of their books. A lot of people are
yeah,
like funding their audiobooks through it.
yep,
um some people are even like funding the costs of a book itself, the cover art and the editing costs and all that kind of stuff.
yep.
And so for me, it's been amazing to see the growth in the crowdfunding space, and not just Kickstarter, right? It's like
It
you've
seems
got,
viable. Yeah,
yeah, like, you've got, like GoFundMe's and Indiegogos and things along
Yep.
those lines. There's a bunch of different platforms,
Yep.
or like the road of doing content on Patreon and doing Royal Road and things like that.
Yeah.
So for indie authors, not just like indie authors, but authors in general, because I see a lot of traditionally published authors who are kind of
Oh,
at
yes.
a crossroads where they realize like how viable is my career in this industry going forward,
Right.
with financial insecurities, with lack of healthcare and whatnot, and just
Right.
the increase in rent costs and food costs and all this kind of stuff. And so it's
Yep.
like, awesome, take things into your own hands. You know, it was
Yeah.
like
It's
doing the book of,
empowering.
yeah,
Yeah.
like doing the Book of Spores really showed me how hungry readers are for that kind of thing. And it's kind of like it's a really nice feedback loop, because people within, you know, the global society who have the means to contribute to something like this, not just like the financial means, but also like the you know, emotional and mental means to like be
Sure.
invested in something like that,
Yeah.
able to feed back into other parts of society, for, you know, creators who can't necessarily make ends meet and pay their bills and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
but have the ability to create a a story from whole cloth and offer that to people, and artists who are able to create art to accompany that and package it and all that kind of thing
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
just unbelievable. I love it.
Me too. Me too. I'm glad to see that project succeeding as well. And that's like a who's who of all of
Yeah.
great writers who've
Yeah.
contributed to that. I mean, there's have you seen the people?
It's basically just like this is a testament to the community in the
Yes.
SFF space, where,
Yes.
you know, Peter was able to go to his friends and ask them for their help, and they were all more than happy to give back to him. And that's
Oh,
like,
it looks like
you
he
know,
got some very and
like Brandon, you know, Brandon, of course, like they co-wrote this book together, so
yeah,
he jumped in there, like Jim Butcher. um you know, I'm just like, I'm blanking on a bunch of names,
I know
but
Jenny Wirtz has
Jenny
contributed a
Wirtz,
story.
yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, there's just a ton of incredible authors in there
Yep.
who were just more than willing to help out a friend, because, you
Yeah.
know, I feel like from the reader side of things, you might have a bit of a disconnect in terms of, okay, I'm reading this person's book, but I don't necessarily know the person behind the book. I
Mhm.
don't necessarily understand the complexities of their personal life and their finances and all this kind of stuff, and
Right.
how truly difficult it is to make it in this industry. Like
Yeah.
the amount of authors who readers probably think are full-time authors versus the amount of authors who actually are full-time authors
Yeah.
is totally skewed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so authors know, and authors understand that struggle, and so that anthology was a really beautiful show of what the SFF community is capable of, and being like, yo, my friend needs help. I'm gonna lend him a hand. I'm gonna give him a story for this anthology, and as a whole, the anthology is just an incredible package, and people
Yeah.
have been responding to it in kind, and that's a really beautiful thing to see. I just love that this industry is becoming more and more flexible for creators to get their stories out there. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
there aren't necessarily as many gatekeepers. There aren't necessarily as many um, hurdles to overcome. And
Hmm.
this is a big part of like why I ended up a starting SFF Addicts, and b deciding to go self-publishing.
Yeah. Oh
Because
yeah.
right from episode two, because it's like episode one was just like an introductory thing that I put out in August of 2021, and then episode two was with Hugh Howey, and Hugh
Wow.
Howey came from Self
Yeah.
Pub
Yep.
and ended up getting picked up by a trad publisher
Yep.
for his Wool series, his Silo series,
After selling
and
millions of copies. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, they're just like, yeah, we got to get in on this cash cow.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Hugh to this day understands where he came from, and understands how much more accessible and viable self-publishing can be for a large portion of creators who want to be published authors but might not necessarily find the success, or just simply jumping over those hurdles of getting an agent and going through the whole querying process, which can be very arduous. and then you
Yep.
get an agent, and then you might not even get your book published because
Oh, I know.
that agent might not even be able to sell your book to to an editor or a publisher,
I
right?
know. Yeah.
It's
You
like,
got to win the my
ah,
metaphor I've used many times is you have to win the lottery at least 3 or 4 times,
yeah,
really.
yeah, yeah.
You got to
That's
get the agent,
exactly it.
number one. And this is
Yeah,
after working your butt off to write a good
writing
book.
and finishing a book. Yeah.
So, but first time you win the lottery is when you get an agent, and I got that far.
Mm,
So I do know that part at
yeah.
least. And then the agent has to sell the book. That's the second time you win the lottery.
Hmm.
But the third time you win the lottery is when the publisher actually backs your book
Yep.
because they don't back most of them. Most of
Hmm.
them are just withering on the vine.
Yeah. I mean, it's like good cover and good marketing budget.
Marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. They're going to pick a couple, a few winners from whatever they're publishing that year and put
Hmm.
everything behind those. And
Exactly.
that's the reality of the traditional publishing industry.
Yeah. It's so cutthroat, and and not to throw shade at anyone in that
No, they're doing their
institution.
work.
They're doing
Yeah.
their work, and
Yep.
they're trying to champion the things that they believe in, right?
Yep.
Um, but right off the bat, like, talking to Hugh, and then doing hundreds of episodes and interviews since then, all these authors really convinced me that, like, I don't want to go through the struggles of queering and being in those trenches, because people call it
Yeah.
trenches because it's like, the 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 Eastern Front in World War II,
Sure. Yeah.
or the Western Front in World War One. It's just like this arduous,
Yeah.
this war of attrition type
Oh, and
situation,
the time
and
it takes too.
yeah,
Like when I
yeah,
did have the agent and he was, throwing my book out to various publishers, it could take a
hmm,
year to hear back.
exactly,
It was like,
exactly,
do I have? I'm not getting younger. I don't have time to
yeah.
wait here. And then of
Yeah,
course, he,
Phil's here. He's just like, I'm growing my Gandalf beard, and they're
that's
just taking
right.
forever.
I know exactly right. So as much as I do want to be Gandalf, I
Yeah,
mean, I want to publish a little bit,
exactly,
sooner than
exactly.
that. So.
Yeah, but I mean, you understand that. You understand the struggle that's involved in that, and the appeal of self-publishing for a lot of people. And from
Yeah.
my perspective, just being in this community for the last 5 years
Hmm.
and publishing my debut novel, and kind of navigating these different spaces, whether it's like content creation and podcasting, or self-publishing and crowdfunding and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
just getting a really deep insight into what opportunities are available to people, and understanding that, like, okay, if you're a very specific type of person, then self-publishing will actually work really, really well for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you're very good at creating social media content. Maybe you're very good at managing projects, and are able to, you know, allocate funds and resources and time to finding the right artist and finding a designer, and,
Hmm.
getting the proper interior formatting and doing all of these things, and just basically like being an entrepreneur. And yet they may be traditionally published, but their career is kind of stifled by a lack of resources from their publisher. Maybe their publisher gave them a terrible cover. All these different kinds of factors that play into it. Their marketing budget was reallocated to somebody who they deemed to be more valuable to their ROI, and all
Yep.
these different things
Yep.
factor into it. And so for me, it was kind of like, I'm writing like kind of a genre blender of fungal people with elements of sci-fi and
Yeah.
fantasy and murder. I'm
Yeah.
like, God, this is not
Where are they going to put
sellable.
that in Barnes and
Yeah. Oh
Noble?
my
Yeah.
God, I had no clue, like, how like I was confident enough that like an agent might be interested in it, but I was just like, man, what publisher is going to be
Yeah.
taking that chance? Like, the days of like the Jeff Vandermeers and China Mieville's
Yeah.
starting out, like those smaller, more like mid-sized publishers who were taking more risks, and bringing on authors who are a little bit more experimental. It's like, no, that's not happening right now. So I was like,
Yeah.
self-pub is my space for that. And so I was able to like kind of carve out my niche where I can write weird SFF stories about mushroom people. I
Yep.
can write a book about a fungal chef crime thriller. Like,
Yeah.
I've really happy that these opportunities are out there for authors who feel like they've poured their heart and soul into a project, but market forces dictate that that project is not necessarily viable, like on an economic level in trad publishing.
Yeah.
But those particular authors might, just because of the inherent um, investment that they have in that project and that story and that world and its characters, who better to sell that book, right? Who better to get an incredible cover for it and, you know, put all of the power into your own hands, not entirely, because we are still dependent on corporations like Amazon and you know, Ingram Spark and whatnot, but
Right. Right.
putting more power into your own hands to dictate what the trajectory of this particular book is going to be.
Exactly.
And it's like looking at what you've been able to do with the Adan books, and you know, seeing like the, like I'm just looking at that incredible broken binding
Ah,
edition of the Way of Adan, and I'm just like,
yeah.
oh
Yeah.
yes, like that stuff, what broken
Yeah.
binding is doing, what Wraithmarked is doing, what all these
Yep.
smaller publishers are doing in conjunction with individual creators and self-published authors is like, I do not think there has been a better time to be an indie author right now.
Yeah.
I do not think there's a better time for traditionally published authors to experiment with hybrid and really
Yep.
broaden their horizons and broaden their um, not only their income streams, but also like their
How they're
ability to
reaching people, right?
their ability to tailor specific
Mm.
projects and creative endeavors
Yeah.
to specific audiences through,
Hmm.
you know, the multitude of platforms is insane. You know, it's like you could go the Matt Dinneman route of like, you know, you're putting your chapters up on your Patreon and people are eating it up, you
Yeah.
know, and you're making money that way, right? And I think these models are really tapping into the multitude of consumer demands and approaches.
Yeah.
Some people might like a more bite-sized thing where they're reading a chapter a week. Other people prefer physical, some prefer ebook, some prefer audiobook.
Hmm.
Some people might like to get stuff on Kickstarter, other people might like to buy their books on, or like read their books on Royal Road. All these different avenues are open to people. And so it's like I'm just trying to like implore my trad friends. I'm just like, consider hybrid.
Yeah.
Consider hybrid.
Yeah,
Consider
absolutely.
hybrid.
You're wise to say so, I think. But speaking of you getting to a point where you're writing a series centered on fungal people,
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you now my standard question for Dear Dr.
Yeah.
Fantasy, which is going on the theory, Adrian, that you are what you read. What have been some of the most formative reads of your life? What have been some of those books that have so spoken to you that you consider
Mm-hmm.
them part of who you are?
Yeah.
And perhaps what also maybe emerged in you as a writer. You can go back as far as you like
Yeah.
to little Adrian, if you wish. So,
little babe covered in mushrooms. No. I've got two. So one of them
okay,
is a series, and then uh, another is an individual book that it's also part of a series. But the first one is Redwall by the series by Brian Jacques,
okay,
which was for me probably the most like fundamental sort of reading experience of my childhood.
huh,
Where it's like, yes, I was reading Harry Potter because it's like I grew up in that time. I
yeah,
was also reading Chronicles of Narnia. I was also reading The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings and all these different kinds of things. I was reading like, you know, Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events and,
all
you know,
those. Yep.
the staples, but it was like Redwall that spoke to me so deeply.
Huh.
A, because I think I really connected with like the anthropomorphized animals that were in
Hmm.
those books,
Hmm.
the mice and the rabbits and the badgers and everything, you know. It's like, damn you if you're a weasel, you know. But like, there's something, I think my world building approach is really rooted in what Redwall achieved, which is
Huh.
like, here are these othered creatures who in our real world we associate with like pets and wild animals and whatever, but
Hmm.
he just humanized them, and he gave them a depth of culture and communication. He in ways that were very subtle and very thoughtful,
Mm.
gave you an insight into here's like the social stratification of the badgers in Salamandastron versus here's how the mice in Redwall function as a community.
Right.
This is how these particular animals eat and feast and blah blah, blah. And like,
There's a
don't even
little
like, man, like
society being
yeah,
built here. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like don't even get me started on the food, man. The food descriptions were phenomenal. And like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just like this little kid, and and I'm just like I'm asking my mom to like make cordials, and she's like, "What the hell is that?" You know what I mean?
That's so funny.
But
Oh, no.
he did such a good job of layering everything in a way that wasn't ever an impediment to the reading experience. It was
Uh-huh.
always immersive. It always felt like it had to be there, and he was so good at infusing the world building and the cultural and social cues into the story itself,
Mm-hmm.
such that it's like here's me as like a 6, 7, 8 year old not feeling lost or overwhelmed by what's going on, and I'm just as invested in a feast as I am in like a duel between like with like Martin the Warrior or something like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So my world building approach I can really trace back to the Redwall series. But then like when it comes to the weird fiction and just like the strangeness, it's like I've
Uh-huh.
always had a fascination with mushrooms, but it wasn't until reading Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer
Ah. Okay.
that that book single-handedly made me want to pursue professional writing, because I was like, this is
Wow.
what's possible. Someone published this, like a publisher put this book out into the world,
Yeah.
and it's so bizarre and so unsettling. And I think it made me realize how reading can be a cerebral experience
Mm.
as much as it can be an entertaining one. And
Mm.
from there, it's just like I just I read the rest of the Southern Reach trilogy with Authority and Acceptance, and started getting into China Mieville and getting really deep into Philip K. Dick, and it was just this spiral of like weird fiction, you know what I mean?
Nice.
And especially reading Philip K. Dick, it was kind of like I think Jeff Vandermeer is kind of like the modern day equivalent to PKD, where it's like the experiments not just with the narrative experience, but also with form and with genre and the mashup of genres and the ways in which things can start to feel really almost like disconnected from reality in this very surreal and uncomfortable way. And if you
Mm.
watch like some of the adaptations of Philip K. Dick's books, like specifically, I would say A Scanner Darkly, which is like,
Mm.
it's not animated. I can't remember the animation style. It's like Roto something. Um,
Okay. Huh.
but it's basically like it's with like Keanu Reeves and Woody Harrelson are in it. It's like it's a star-studded cast, but it's like it's kind of this like they filmed the movie, but then it's like they apply like this animated filter over top.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if it's rotoscoping. I'm not sure if that's the terminology for it.
Huh.
That's what's coming to my mind. But if you go watch that movie, that is like a really good visual interpretation of what Philip K. Dick and authors like Jeff Vandermeer are able to achieve on the page. That it's like through words, you can make someone question, almost like a psychedelic experience taking mushrooms. You can make them question
Yeah.
life and reality and the human experience and human perception.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this went into influencing how I approached the fungal people, how I approached my blending of genres,
Yeah.
how I incorporated these sort of like existential questions and experiences and themes into my work
Yeah.
in ways that it's like, yeah, I'm trying to tell like an entertaining story, but I was talking to Crystal Matar about this once because we watched this Martin Scorsese documentary or docu series called Mr. Scorsese.
Uh-huh.
And after she watched it first, and then she's like, Adrian, you got to watch this. It's so good. But after my wife and I watched it, I was just thinking about like the filmography of Martin Scorsese and these movies that I've come to really, really love, like Goodfellas and Casino and Shutter Island and um, Mean Streets and Raging Bull and all these like really gritty, hard-hitting movies
Hmm.
that a lot of them have very tragic protagonists. They're all kind of like cautionary tales. And Crystal and I were just kind of like musing to each other on WhatsApp. We're just like, huh, it's kind of like us. Like we can't tell like upbeat stories. Like there's some part of us that just needs to delve into some darker part of like the human psyche or the human experience. And I think Jeff Vandermeer definitely solidified in my mind the confidence to be able to do that
Yeah.
without needing to necessarily hold the reader's hands at every possible moment. It's like you
Yeah.
can trust the reader, you can throw the reader into the deep end.
Sure.
And and in the case of Mushroom Blues and A Murder Most Fungal, it's like I am kind of like giving you training wheels in a sense, where it's like the the structural framework is built around a familiar genre and familiar beats. In
Uh-huh.
the case of Mushroom Blues, it's like I'm giving you police procedurals and murder mysteries as this sort of framework that you can cling to, and I'm just gonna just like trickle in world building, and I'm gonna amp up the weirdness, and I'm just gonna make it more and more and more like surreal and challenging as the story goes along,
Yeah.
because I know that you have those training wheels to keep you balanced,
Well,
right? In
you
the
you
case
can
of
really see it too in the journey of Henrietta, your
yeah,
protagonist,
yeah,
where you have a person who's coming from, and no spoilers here, but she's coming from some major trauma.
yeah, that
And
she herself caused a lot of the
yes,
time.
yes, a
Yeah.
lot of it is self-inflicted, but some
Hmm.
of it is just life circumstances and so on. But and she's in a also a female detective in a very patriarchal realm
Hmm.
as well, and dealing with that. But you can see her even in Mushroom Blues. There are certain particular experiences where you see her opening up,
Hmm.
and this is I assume this is going to be part of her greater journey through the
Yeah.
series. But
Yeah.
that I love. I love when you see in a gritty, dark, difficult world people struggling and succeeding in making connections with others
Hmm.
and having glimpses of beauty and
Yeah.
hope through those connections with others. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean everything is kumbaya here,
Exactly.
still pretty gritty.
Yeah.
But I feel that there's some nobility in that
Yes.
struggle. And
Yeah.
I
And
see
and
that in her journey. Yeah.
yeah, and A Murder Most Fungal is building on that, but it's kind of coming from a different angle, where it's
Mm.
like here, because specifically because it's from the perspective of the fungal people.
Yeah.
I went a lot into how a fungal perspective POV works, right? And
Hmm.
so it's like you get a lot more, whereas in Mushroom Blues, Henrietta was kind of revolted by her environment because she's mycophobic and she's disgusted by mushrooms and she's not there by choice, right? Pocho is a fungal person who's grown up in this environment, and so he finds beauty and wonder where Henrietta would find disgust, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you get these kind of like contrasting perspectives. But then on top of it, it's like Henrietta's arc for me is kind of like on an upward swing,
Hmm.
whereas Pocho's is on a downward swing.
Yeah.
Pocho's very much a tragic character, and I kind of frame A Murder Most Fungal as a Michelin star tragedy in 6 courses. So
I love
it's
it.
very much like here's this chef who has finally regained, some of the prominence that he had once lost,
Hmm.
and everything just starts falling apart around him. And no matter how much he tries, because you can see how good he is with his
Hmm.
intentions and everything like that, but there are also parts of him that are darkly egocentric and mistakes that he makes that are overlooking the needs and desires of the people around him. And so no
Hmm.
matter how much he tries, it's like his life continues to fall apart and ultimately becomes this tragedy, right? And so it's
Yeah.
really interesting for me to be able to contrast that with like here's the individual in relation to their environment. In the case of Henrietta and Neo Kanoko, she is starting to kind of like warm up to it, and that's an
Hmm.
exploration that's going to deepen over the course of the series.
Yeah.
Whereas Pocho is someone who's very familiar with this environment, very much in tune with the fungal experience and interacting with his, his environment directly, where it's like, say like here's my door, there's no door there. It's just a wall of mycelium. And in order to enter my house, I just place my hand on the door, and the house itself, which is alive, recognizes me and unfurls its mycelium to allow me passage, right?
Yeah.
Or like what I mentioned, how the floors in the kitchen are made of mycelium, and so it's like, oh, you drop crumbs and stuff on the floor, the mycelium is going to consume that and break it down and kind of incorporate it into the building itself.
Yeah.
And not only that, but the fungal people are communicating with each other, not just verbally, but they're able to communicate with each other basically like brain to brain through
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
interconnected fungal network. And so they can have conversations with each other, and humans are present, but the humans don't know what they're thinking about.
Yeah.
And there are times in the story as well where, you know, Pocho's having a conversation out loud verbally, and it's got a very chipper tone to it. It's more like, him trying to test the waters with a new vendor,
Yeah.
but it turns out the vendors are actually the gangsters who are blackmailing him. So he's having a verbal conversation with them, asking them about their seafood, all the while he's having a brain to brain conversation where the gangster is threatening him and blackmailing him simultaneously.
Wow, that puts a
Yeah.
whole other level to what is
Yep.
essentially a high context culture there,
Yep.
doesn't it? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. Wow. Well, Adrian, I always knew you were a fun guy, but
You had to get that in there,
I
didn't
had to get in.
you? You had to.
Sorry, I apologize, the old man joke. But I
We
have
got
really,
you got your one. You got
I
your
did,
one.
I get a freebie at
You
least,
get a
right?
freebie every time.
I think I've earned it at this point in my life,
Yeah.
but no, I really was anticipating this was going to be a fun conversation, and I'm so glad that we've had the chance to talk now.
Me
I've been
too.
looking forward to this a lot ever since we arranged this, and I'm so excited for you for this launch of A Murder Most Fungal. And guys, if you haven't, I'll put a link in the description to everything. I'll have a few links there for your website and for people to get a hold of Mushroom Blues. And what is the best way, though, before I do all that, for people to get hold of your books, Adrian?
Yeah, so Mushroom Blues you can get anywhere books are sold. You can buy it on Amazon or you can get it at your local bookstore. Always give your indie bookstores a bit of love.
And you said there's an
Um,
audiobook as well.
and there's an audiobook as well, narrated by Imogen Church, also featuring the soundtrack. We incorporated it into the beginning of every chapter.
Wow.
Um, the the music is just fantastic and super cool. So highly recommend checking that out. Imogen did a fantastic job. And then you can also get signed hardcovers through the Broken Binding.
Sweet.
They're also 2 packs, sort of like an Hoffman Report 2 book bundle. If you've never read Mushroom Blues, but you also want to get A Murder Most Fungal, you can buy both books together with a discount. And then
Nice.
you can get signed copies of A Murder Most Fungal hardcovers through the Broken Binding as well. Or you can pre-order the ebook on Amazon, and then hardcover and paperback will be out on launch day on June 16th.
June
So
16, everyone. June 16. All right. I'm very
yeah,
excited for you and be on the lookout for Adrian. You'll be making the rounds as we approach June 16. But this has been such a delight. I've had a
thank you,
great
man. I
time
really appreciate
chatting
it.
with you. I hope we'll have an occasion to chat again.
Let's do it. Yeah,
All
whenever
right.
you want me on the channel, man, just let me know.
Sounds perfect. All right. Well, that is it from us for now. Until next time.